Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cap and Gown. I'm Rachel Phillips Buck, VP for Student Success at Ferris Resources, joined today by our president, Matt Boisvert. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Rachel. Great to
How's
be
it
with
going?
you. It's great.
Yeah, I'm happy that you're with me today. What?
I said it's episode 3. It's great.
It is? I'm having a hard time keeping track because we used to count it a different way, and now we're doing seasons and counting it. So it's like episode 90, right? But it's like season 4, episode 3.
I think this is an easier way for us to keep track of it.
Yeah,
right?
I totally agree. Thank you guys for joining us. I know so many of you join us on LinkedIn. If you have not liked us on LinkedIn or followed us on LinkedIn, please do that. My 11-year-old daughter would be so tickled that I'm supposed to say follow and subscribe on YouTube because she practices saying that at home. Did you know this, Matt? This is like a thing that they do, like subscribe. Yeah, it's like pop culture language for did you like what I did there?
Oh,
so if somebody says something funny, then you're like, please like and subscribe. You're like, okay, I don't know. It's a different world. Don't get me started.
That's great.
We're in September. The exciting thing is that you and I got to travel to Knoxville last week, which if you know anything about the season of fall, it is too early for leaves to be turning. Do you know the story that I'm going to tell right now?
No, I was going to mention us being a place where the leaves started to turn.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead.
And I got very fall is my favorite. We don't get it in Texas, and I am very moved every time I get to see fall. So when I found out we were going to Tennessee for the ACA conference last week, I was like Googling like when's peak foliage, and they're like, get out of here. Nothing's changing until October. Sorry. Then you and I were walking down the street and I saw one red leaf fall from the sky. And I looked up, and in a totally green tree, there was one branch at the very top that had like 4 red leaves, and one of them had fallen. So I thanked the tree, as I do speak to trees, and got to see some fall.
Yeah. I love Knoxville. Beautiful.
Your enthusiasm of that story was very low.
Not at all. It's just internal. I saw it in real life go down, and I was like,
I'm just saying, so many people listen to us as a podcast, and they would be like, wow, she told that whole story, and then he just had nothing to say about it. All right. Anywho.
It's great. It's always fun.
It was great
to see fall come.
And it was a great conference, and we got to spend time with so many of our clients. And so that was a really nice trip. The other exciting thing that I want to tell you about is we are announcing our Lighthouse Awards this week. So we're posting those on LinkedIn. We sent a really nice award to all of our winners. We have 4 different categories. So I just want to spend like 2 seconds on each of these people because they're really remarkable. We give these awards out every year, and I look back at the people that we've given the awards to, and I just continue to see like their superstar rise in their institutions. So first of all, Andrea Faber at Tiffin University, her dedication to Ferris 360 is noteworthy. It's transformational for her students and for the Tiffin campus. Her commitment to deepening her understanding of how our software works has directly contributed to so many successful student interventions that she has directed. So I'm thrilled for us to be able to recognize her. She is, I think I said on LinkedIn, it's just a joy to watch her work because she always is working to try to understand why we're doing a thing, and then she delivers it with excellence. So super happy about that, Andrea. Congratulations.
So many students impacted by Andrea's work. It's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Our next winner is Socorro Wilson from Texas Lutheran University. She just has a spirit of relentless learning that she's applied to all of her student success projects. She's committed to mastering our software and our interventions, and she's just really dedicated to her growth in knowledge, but also in teaching her community all of the different things that she's learning. So I'm excited. She's done a great job. She's an emerging leader. So I just expect her to continue to grow and have great success on that campus. So we love that. Yeah. Socorro, welcome.
Awesome.
Yep. And then we have our institution of the year, which is Emmanuel College. Beth Ross right now is the president there. We've worked with her for many, many years. We are so grateful to work for that institution. Everybody on that campus is so focused on student success. And they really have made great strides to embrace student interventions, to identify their students and connect and solve their problems, and then also to have really great outcome measurements. So super happy about Emmanuel College. Congratulations. And then our last one, which is really fun, is our data and applications professional. So Alexandra Jeffords. This is an award that goes to the IT person who is just committed to student success. And that comes out as we're doing our implementation. I mean, Alexandra was just eager to get all of the technical pieces in place so all of our practitioners could start using our software. She was joyful and just really, really proficient and competent in everything that she did. So she set up Davis and Elkins College for success. So congratulations, Alexandra. Awesome.
It's so great to work with people.
I know it. There is every year there is a lot of competition about who gets those awards because there are so many people that we work with that are just incredible, passionate about student success and the work that they do. So congratulations, you guys. Very well earned. All right, Matt, we are going to talk a little bit about
now
motivation
Before we get into talking about motivation, you know, Rachel, our theme for the year is joyful, right?
Yes.
And so yes. I have a happiness word. This comes from Happiness Found in Translation by Tim Lomas. This is a glossary of joy from around the world. And this one comes from Japan. So,
okay.
All right. So this is Shinri Ro. No, I totally messed that up. Shinri Yoku. And it just means Shinri Yoku.
Okay.
And it means forest bathing, which I know you'll love. This is appreciating and harnessing the therapeutic power of woodlands, the restorative impact of immersion in nature, which ties right into what you're saying about fall. But I think it's so powerful. You and I both have that, where for me, when I'm in Colorado and able to explore and fish and be immersed in nature, it's very powerful. So
for sure,
there you go.
It's one of my favorite things. Great, thank you. I told you the reason I don't do that is because I can't. Phonetics is not my strength, so we would all be sunk if I had to do it.
Yeah, I totally stumbled through that one.
All right. Well, I know that we have a lot of new listeners for this season. So I want to welcome you guys and also just give you kind of a format for how we do things. We do a little what I call chit chat at the beginning, which is what we've just accomplished. And then we move into our State of the Union, where I just tell you some really big things that are happening in higher education. And then we move on to our content. This week, we're going back to our book, Drive, and talking about motivation. But first, it is time for us to do State of the Union. All right, I have a couple of small things for you today, and then I have one kind of gigantic thing that we need to talk about. I'm going to recommend that you read an article out of Inside Higher Ed about how club advisors can best mentor college students. If you've heard me talk about our student success funnel, identify how do you find the right students to serve, connect and solve, how do you make sure they feel seen and help them with their problems, and then measure, you know that I'm often saying, what is happening today?
Sorry. I miss Trey. Can I just say, Trey Cox was a master at this.
Our producer, Matt's trying to fill his shoes, and it's a little difficult.
Are you on the right side now? Are you on the right side?
It's fine. So if you think about when I talk about connecting and solving, and I'm like, our schools know that that's super important, but the question is, how do we actually accomplish it? This article is a very practical, here's how you can teach people how to mentor students. So it's just things like, make sure you know their why. Why are they in school? Why do they have the major they do? Those are great questions to be asking. Make sure you have a foundation of trust. You want to be interested in the student's interest and be proactive and celebrate wins. And then also just make sure you understand the difference between like enabling and mentoring, right? Or don't give them too much information. Don't overwhelm them. We're thinking about mentoring in the moment when they need what they need right now, instead of like just giving them, an overload of too much that they don't need to know about. So recommend that you read that article.
So will you read the title of that article or headline of that article again?
It's called How Club Advisors Can Best Mentor College Students. So it's specifically for club advisors, but everything they're saying there would be something that I would tell faculty or student success staff or anybody on your campus about that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how powerful that is. When I was the AMA advisor, and you just learn a whole lot about what's going on in the student's life outside of a classroom, right?
For sure. The other one I'm going to recommend that you read is also from Inside Higher Ed. It's called Faculty Actions to Help Promote College Student Well-Being. I'm not going to cover this article, you guys, because it's a student voice survey, which I find very hard to interpret for you because there's so many numbers and they have some really good visualization in this article. And so I would recommend you go read it. What I think is remarkable is this is asking students about the amount of involvement they want from faculty members in addressing stress and mental health issues. Okay, so that's like the overarching theme of this survey that they did. And I find it incredible, the expectations that students have for faculty in addressing these issues. I cannot imagine when I went to school that I would have had any expectation that my faculty would help me address these issues. But I want to give you one example from this. So this is students say to what degree professors should help actively promote their physical health and wellness on a scale from 0, no involvement, to 5, the highest level of involvement. Okay. And then they gave examples of this is what 0 would look like. This is what 5 would look like. So 6% of the students responded, professors should not be involved at all. 6%.
Wow.
11% said 1, which is like putting health and wellness resources in the syllabus. Okay. 15% said 2, which would be talking about health, wellness, and self-care in class. 29% said 3, which is avoiding late night or early morning deadlines to encourage healthy sleep habits. 18% said 4, which is incorporating mindfulness practices in class, such as brief breathing exercises. And 20% said 5, incorporating wellness activities into the curriculum and offering extra credit for participation in wellness activities outside of class. Does that surprise you?
That's very surprising. However, I don't know, Rachel. I think we're seeing this transition from high school to college expectations, because in high school you do have, I think you have more teachers who are more actively involved and trying to be more holistic with their students. So
yeah, well, I think surprising.
As a faculty member, I'd be shocked to hear that.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't even thinking about that.
It's for sure worth the read. And I think there's a lot of very surprising things coming out of that. Speaking of high school graduates, another article coming out of Inside Higher Ed, which is about what they're calling the lost class, the lost generation, which this doesn't make sense. The lost generation, but it's only 1 year. And they've named that badly. We're going to call it the lost class. But it is about high school students who graduated in 2020 going on to college. And basically all of the statistics are that is a class that we are not going to see in college. Now they're 2-3 years out. It gets harder to come back to college when you don't have your high school counselor, when your friends aren't doing that. They have whole lives because they took this gap year after they graduated, right? And so there's a lot of concern about that class of students and what they're going to do. And most of the people are saying they're just not going to come back to college.
Yeah. What did you say? So for this class, of those who were kind of college ready or college bound ready, 1 out of 8?
So 1 out of 8 of the students who were supposed to or expected to enter college in the fall of 2020 have actually enrolled. So it's just a shrinking, I mean, it's just going to be a small population. And the problem, Matt, is that then that's going to move through for 4 years that you just have a smaller population to choose from. So pretty interesting.
Well, there's an opportunity for your enrollment. Go, how do we go find these class of 2020 students? Yeah.
And what's the pathway back in, right? Because it's it's what we always talk about is like they are a homogeneous group, right? They're going to have some truths about them that you could create a program that then would lead them back into your college. So the good news is that the class of 2022 has raised its college enrollment rate. So that's really nice. Like, okay, we're back to where we started, but it's just going to be a small class. So,
yeah.
All right. This article is about a community college who is allowing students to register for 3 semesters at once, which you and I both love. This is the Alamo College District out of San Antonio. They're like, hey, people plan their lives more than 15 weeks ahead. So why can't we let students know what the next year and a half looks like? We're going to let them enroll. This gives them like a very clear vision of how they're going to be able to be successful on your campus. A lot of schools don't do this because it's really tricky, right? So there's a lot of moving pieces. Like, how can you enroll for 3 semesters if you've only paid for 1 semester? If you have an account balance, like just a lot of logistics to work out there. I think they are letting you enroll for 3 semesters, but still pay term by term, which is different than a lot of other schools do. And you and I were talking about the hardship of allowing students to enroll 3 semesters out is that you have to know what your courses are going to be. Course planning is incredibly important. So they're looking at the previous enrollment data to decide when they're going to offer classes. And of course, the outcome of this will be then that they look at retention and graduation rates of those who opted in for the 3 semester registration to see if the outcomes make a difference. So that will be really nice when we get to see some results there.
Hey, I just want to say on that, Rachel, there's so much. So what's keeping them? In some cases, it's the accounting, the technology. I mean, these are problems that hopefully the big SISs help solve, because this is the right way to give a student this 3 semester plan is really smart. But if technology is in the way of that happening, then that's just a problem that needs to be removed, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's right. Okay, Matt, this has been the talk of the town for the last week. I hope you guys have heard about this. I'm sure that you have. I have to be careful because I'm a little bit exuberant about it. And I know not everybody is. Like, some people are very unhappy about this, but I'll try to just report the facts. Okay. All right. So the U.S. News and World Report that does rankings of schools has released their new rankings with some tweaks. So they have decided that they're going to evaluate social mobility outcomes more strongly than they have in the past. And they're going to do away with some other measurements that they used. So just to remind you, remember that Yale and Harvard about a year ago dropped out of the law school rankings. They're like, we think this is stupid. We don't want to do it anymore. And you and I talked about how, especially for smaller schools, rankings can be really good because it gives you something to point to say we're doing a good job with our students, right? So some schools are saying we're not even going to participate, but for our smaller schools, a lot of times they do participate. Okay, so the US News said, we really don't like that we're not prioritizing colleges that historically have helped our marginalized students. So they are now 2.5% of the calculations for these rankings is based on a college's success on graduating students who are the first in their family to attend college. So we're looking at success with first generation students, which is awesome.
Right.
Another 2.5% accounts for first generation college student graduation rates as compared to your overall graduation rate, which I love. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
And then they also are newly assessing college's share of students who 4 years after they finish their degree earn more than a typical high school graduate. So that is a new thing that they're going and looking at. And they're weighing their social mobility factors more. So it used to be 5% weight on those social mobility things. Now it's 6%. So they're just looking at it in a much different way. They dropped, so they are no longer factoring in class size, the share of students in the top of their high school, the share of full-time equivalent faculty with terminal degrees, levels of alumni giving, and the proportion of graduates borrowing federal loans. Really interesting for them to drop that. And so what we have seen over the past week when they said they were going to do this is like seismic shifts in rankings for different schools, right? So some schools have dropped 70 points. Some schools have shot up 40 points, all because of the way that they're doing this,
Right.
this measurement. They did preserve the ACT and SAT measurement as 5% of their methodology. However, if you're not taking that on your campus, they have a different way that they're looking at that. And so it just depends on what you've decided to do. As you can imagine, presidents are very unhappy about this, especially if you've been sort of a ranking chasing school, right? Like
Right.
you got it all worked out how you were going to be where you were. And now this is all changing. So for example, Vanderbilt, which fell from 13 to 18, was like, we think this methodology is terrible. There are a lot of flaws. We don't think it's appropriate because it's not measuring quality and excellence. So
That's what
they're like, the question of quality gets mashed into outcomes and affordability. And that's not what we're selling, right? Like some schools are not selling outcomes and affordability. They're selling prestige, right?
Right.
So this idea that they fail to recognize excellence because they're putting more weight on these social mobility, but it reflects what's happening in college. People are going to college because they want to make more money than they would have otherwise. And
Right.
they want to have the social mobility that colleges afford. So it totally makes sense to me that you would be measuring on those things. Let me see if there's anything else I want to tell you. So basically, they're just like, hey, you've changed it. So the product of colleges is social mobility, and we feel very mad about it. And we don't like that you did that. A lot of presidents are putting out statements that they think it's a wreck. I would just like to remind you that 58% of high school seniors investigating colleges actively consider rankings, but only 5% knew their first choice institution's placement well enough to identify it. So let's talk about how high school students are using that. Not so much.
Right.
Mostly rankings are being used by presidents for their governing boards, their donors, and lawmakers. So it's not so much that students are going to be like, oh, wow, well, I was going to go to you, but now you're 30 points lower. It's that for board members, there's going to be a huge shakeup there. So
I just think it's pretty powerful. You know, when we're doing our Spark meetings and we're working with schools and showing them the gap between first generation, non-first generation, gap between Pell recipients and non-Pell, and helping them, one, measure it and then start working on closing that gap. We have so many schools where their Pell is actually graduating at a higher rate than non-Pell. those are the schools that are shooting up in the rankings,
I
right?
know. And I'm so happy for those schools because I feel like they're getting credit for the good work that they're doing. And I mean, I don't know. We might have to do a whole cap and gown on that because I have a lot to say about it, but it is so nice to look at those schools that support the students that they admit and promise can be successful, and for them to be able to get rewarded on
So
it.
that's exactly what I was going to say. The promise. So that's fine if you wanted to have like two categories. Do you want your school to be in the prestigious ranking category or in this mobility category?
That's
And
right.
because that's what students are going to look at. For a student like me, and we always say this, can I be successful at your institution? And so it's really neat to see the schools that are moving up. And for those schools that are falling down their rankings, this is a recalibration for them. Like, hey, we need to get serious about Pell, First Gen, some of these other factors that are really influencing.
I think it just realigns a school's focus to the important things, not
Right.
just the things that are gonna help you climb the ladder, right? So it just gives them flexibility to be like, oh, we can both have a great ranking and take care of our students, and that's the right thing to do. So I love
Yeah.
it.
It's great.
Okay, my last one is I kind of think is hilarious, but I don't know what everyone's going to think about this. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal about it's called "A Mother's Love: A Bargain at $450 a year plus applicable fees." Okay?
Okay.
So this is about this rash of companies and individuals who are becoming concierge moms for students in colleges near them. So, for example, there's this woman who you pay $450 a year plus delivery fees, and this woman will perform the same duties that you expect from your mom. So it's like, I am sick. Will you bring me chicken noodle soup? Or can I have my packages delivered to you? Or can you help me find a tutor for this thing? Or can I come over for dinner once a month? Like this, a wide range of things that these different companies are doing. Some of them are crazy town. So that's like, I think, a pretty fair amount to request for this. There's another company where it's $10,000 a year. It's concierge services for students based in Boston. It came out of this woman who was like, I'm going to do this for international students.
Oh.
And then now I think she accepts 30 clients a semester or maybe a year and
Wow.
takes care of them in all of these different ways because their parents are far away and they can't take care of them. And then there's another example where this woman started Daisy Bug Delivery, which is where students can pay a small fee for their packages to be delivered to her house. And then she brings them to them in the dorm. So she's like, I will get 100 packages in a day. And then I just put them all in my van and take them to the dorm so that students can get them. It's
Wow.
I love people's creativity.
Well, who knew there was this whole side economy for supporting college students,
Yeah.
right? I mean, being a mom, supporting them with some emotional support, some encouragement, I need a sport coat and it's 7 a.m. Can you help me find one? Right?
Yeah, for sure. So I have a lot of problems with spending $10,000. Like obviously people aren't going to be able to do that, but I actually think that there's a lot that could come out of that model that then would inform how the kind of support that our students need, because
Right.
you would be able to see, like, the story of when I was sick and ain't nobody delivering chicken soup to me. Like I had to walk 2 miles in the snow to get my medicine, So just understanding the kinds of things that students would need out of that model, I think could be really interesting.
Wow.
That is the State of the Union. That was a lot of State of the Union. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so let's dive into our topic. We are talking today about motivation. I want to remind everybody that the book we are using is called Drive. It's by Daniel Pink. He is looking at ways to build a motivation. And I will remind you that the last time we talked about this book, the chapter we talked about was the difference in sort of operating systems in humans. So we had motivation 1.0, which is like don't get eaten and find food, right?
Run, run.
And then we evolved a little bit into motivation 2.0, which is seek rewards and avoid punishment. And there's a lot of psychological studies and a lot of things were kind of set up with this idea that people are motivated by getting more good stuff and avoiding bad stuff, right?
Sure.
And then Pink says that motivation 3.0, actually, there's a lot of evidence that that comes from this intrinsic drive that is around autonomy. We want freedom. We want to be able to do things the way we think they should be done. And we want to be in charge of ourselves. Mastery. We want to get really good at some things and continue to grow and have challenges. And we want to have purpose in our work. We want to see the value. We want to understand the good things that are happening. Which, side note, Matt, I don't know that we've said on this program before that I'm working on my PhD. And I just had to do a presentation on leadership in the industrial age.
Right.
The whole presentation was about like in factories, which were set up to be like to cut down on the cost of production. They're like, you need to remember that you should give people only one task to do. Like, don't give them a lot of different tasks. You just give them like, they just screw on this widget every time. Also remind them they're not in charge of themselves. They have to do what the foreman says, right? And they don't need to understand why you make any decisions. Their job is just to be there and like screw on the widget. And
now, this is 1948, right?
No,
this is
1957. Yeah.
Okay.
So like, right. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent, but I think it's so fascinating that this researcher, Argus, was like, hey guys, if you want people in a factory to be happy, you've got to give them autonomy. You have to give them a challenge. You can't give them the same things every single time. And also you have to make sure that they have purpose, that they know why you have the policies you do. So consistent. Let's not go work in factories. Okay.
Well, yeah.
Do you have?
I know you have a whole hour presenting on that, but I think it's interesting because I was saying to you earlier, when I think about your Enneagram and my Enneagram and why this whole motivation 3.0 really resonates with us, I think part of it is what motivates us based on our Enneagram number.
I'm a 7 and I just want to be happy and free. That's all.
Yeah. Unrestrained.
Yeah, exactly.
Autonomous. Yep. And so for me, I'm a 3. And so the idea of like being successful in this carrot and stick, growing up, like it's real clear, like I want more carrots and less stick, and that's being successful. And then there's this point in time where being recognized for other things. And so I love the mastery and the purpose piece. The reason why we do what we do is it's really not for the money. It's because we love the work of student success. It's really powerful. It changes lives. And also we want to be really great at it, right?
Yeah, for sure. So this chapter that we're talking about today is actually about how oftentimes the carrot and the stick don't work and can have some really negative consequences that maybe you don't see coming. I want to make a distinction here. Work is work, and you can be happy at work when you have mastery and autonomy and purpose, but also we do have this extrinsic reward, right? Which is we get paid. Hopefully that's not the reason you do your job, but that is part of what we're talking about. This is really about how applying rewards to certain situations can have a negative effect on people and can decrease some of their functionality. So first of all, I would just say you can, through certain practices, turn work into play and play into work, right? So normally we sort of classify work as something that you must do. You're obligated to do this thing. And play is something that you're not obligated to do, but you do anyway. And so you guys will remember in Tom Sawyer, the Sawyer effect, which is where he took work, which was painting the fence. And his friends came by and was like, we're so sorry you have to whitewash this fence. And he's like, sorry, this is like the most amazing thing I've ever done. And they're like, can we do it? And he's like, no, I'm doing it. And then after a while, he lets them try it. He frames it as play, And so they whitewash the fence many times over because it's so enjoyable, because it has been framed as play instead of work. And so that's called this Sawyer effect. And it is the idea that you can frame work and play depending on how you do it. And that there are some things that if you frame it as work, it snuffs out the autonomy, mastery, and purpose part of it, right? So you have a great example of this, actually. Your
What,
fly
my
fishing.
fly fishing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love to fly fish. I love to teach people how to fly fish. My family, my nephews and nieces. I love that part. But the idea of taking this thing that I just love and then becoming a guide, which I've thought about, but then that makes the thing I love just work, right? So you have people you don't know paying you and having expectations. And one of the big expectations is that they catch a huge trout, right?
Right. Right.
And so if you're constantly, you take a thing you love, I don't know, Rachel, there's a lot of people who love to cook like you do. And then they're like, oh, I'll open a restaurant, or someone says you should open a restaurant. And you can just see that person just start to fade away. Like the joy disappears because all the other stress that comes along with this thing that I used to love, all of that stress was there, or I guess the components could have been there, but now it's you have this other responsibility called getting paid for it.
Work. Yeah, exactly. So this is the idea that you can apply rewards, which then would convert something that's enjoyable and that you're intrinsically motivated to do into something that is obligatory, and you're going to lose your joy and engagement in the task, right?
So Rachel, I just think about when we're doing Cap and Gown, and I'm always thinking about how does this apply to our schools, the people we love to serve, and their students. And you can think about how do we take a what would be a project that a student would get a grade on, how do we make that play? How can we take this huge task and turn it into play?
I don't know, Matt. I mean, it's funny because when you say that, what I think about is when I was in middle school and my history teacher, so I was in middle school in Maryland, and my history teacher loved reenactments. And so we would go on the weekends and watch him do reenactments. If he had made us do that, like if he was like, you must do that for a grade, it would not have been interesting. It would have been awful, right? Because like, oh gosh, we've got to go. But in this case, he was like, hey, it's if you get good grades on my test, you get to come to this reenactment and you get to watch the Battle of Gettysburg. And it was so fun, right?
Wow.
He could have cast that though as work, and then we wouldn't have liked it. We would have been like, I don't want that, right?
But on the other side, you think about what's happening on campuses, and so much of working on a campus is, yeah, we're getting paid to be on a campus, but it feels like play so much, right?
Yeah.
Like you get to spend time with students and that, what do you call it? The collisions that happen, right? And all of these things that really, that's what gives you the life, the reason to be on campus. It's certainly not the pay.
Yeah.
It is that experience that really feels like play. I get to hang out and pour into lives and watch my students grow, right? And I'm worried that some of that is being taken away right now, and it's starting to feel a little bit more and more like work because that's being taken away.
Okay. Another thing that applying extrinsic rewards can do is actually diminish performance. So this one I think is really, really interesting. They ran a study. I think it was Friedman ran this study, and I forget what book. We know him from a book that I can't remember anymore. Yeah, it's over there. I can't remember.
It's over there. Okay.
Yeah. So he went to India and he did an experiment where he had 9 different random tasks, like remember this string of numbers or rearrange these letters into a word, or just random things that he was asking people to do. And he had volunteers come, and then he split them up into different groups. And the first group, for if they were successful in the task, they got 4 rupees, which is the equivalent of a day's wage. And in the second group, if they were successful, they got 40 rupees, which is the equivalent of 2 weeks' pay. And in the third group, if they were successful, they got 400 rupees, which is about 6 months pay. Okay.
Okay.
What's really interesting is the first two groups performed about the same. So that wasn't a reward, like an extrinsic award that had an effect on it in a negative way. The third group, who stood to get 6 months pay if they could be successful, in 8 of the 9 tasks, they had the worst performance. So in that case, there's something about the pressure of this reward that then makes it so that half of your brain is not focusing on the task at hand. It's just constantly thinking, but if I could do this, I wouldn't have to work for 6 months, or whatever the case may be, right?
And if I fail, then I've let everyone down.
Right, exactly. So, which leads into the next thing that a reward can do, which is it can stifle creativity. Because you and I have talked before about creativity has to have your whole brain. It has to be open. It can't be worried. It can't be stressed. It can't feel these constrictions or think, oh my gosh, I have to come up with this or I'm not going to make the money, right? Which is how this 400 rupee group felt. But there's also a lot of evidence that when you apply an extrinsic reward, your creative brain feels anxious and shuts down, and it's much, much harder for you to come up with that creativity. So you and I were talking earlier just about the idea of somebody holding a gun to you and saying, think of something creative. And you would be like, my brain is so anxious right now. I have nothing. I can't. Right. So the example of this is in the book. Have you, I showed you the picture of the candle exercise. So I'm going to actually have to show you guys, and I will try to describe it for those of you who join us on the podcast. But they took some people into a room and they gave them this setup, which is a box of tacks, a candle, and some matches. Okay. And the goal was, they said to the people, your job is to fix the candle to the wall so that the wax doesn't drip on the table. And so people were trying to figure this out, and they would like melt the bottom of the candle and they would stick it on the wall and it would fall off. And what are they going to do? And eventually, usually it's after 5 or 10 minutes, they come up with the solution, which is to take the box that the tacks are in, affix it to the wall, and then put the candle on top of it so it drips in the box. And part of that is about like, you don't think of the box as a resource until you go through this process a little bit, right? But in terms of creativity, they asked a group of people to do this, and they broke them up into 3 different groups. The first one, they said, we're going to time you how long it takes you to solve this problem, but we're just doing it for benchmarking. Like, don't go fast, don't go slow. We're just trying to understand on average how long it takes somebody to do this. The second group, they said, if you're in the top fastest, we'll give you $20. And the third group, they said, if you are fastest, we will give you a lot of money, right? It took the fastest group, the last one where they're like, we'll give you a big reward for this. It took them on average 3.5 minutes longer to solve that problem, because there was part of their brain that was being activated and wasn't looking at this task at hand. They were feeling stressed out about, can I be the fastest person to figure it out? Which is not the way to think. Right?
Yeah, I was thinking about, we were talking about escape rooms and how, like, when you're with your friends and really the motivation there is just to work well together and solve all the riddles or whatever and get out of the room at a fast time. But if they put like $1,000 on it, some people in your group, their brain's gonna be totally rushed, not slowing down to really think through things. So yeah, I could really see that. This is so important to me, Rachel. This issue of stifling creativity. And again, as I'm thinking about what's going on in higher ed, and all of the challenges, all the things that we just went through, all of the things that we're facing right now, enrollment wise, high school GPA issues, like, from an enrollment, we need creativity. And so thinking about how do we foster creativity within our teams across our campus to solve some of these problems and really create some space where people aren't feeling the pressure. And it's not about a monetary reward that
Right.
at the end, if we solve this problem, this is the big reward. The big reward is we get to work in a place that we love, and it's fun. We have purpose. We've become masters of solving this problem. It's why I've posted on LinkedIn a lot about Hope College and how the president of Hope College is really focused on how do we solve this tuition issue. And so they have the Hope Promise, which is a kind of a pay it forward tuition plan. Really creative, super interesting approach. So we need to solve these problems creatively. We can't do it feeling like just with having this outside pressure on us.
Very true. Okay, a couple of other scenarios where extrinsic rewards are going to have a negative effect on people's motivations. One is that extrinsic rewards tends to crowd out good behavior. So an example here is that if you are going to donate blood and somebody says to you, will you come and donate blood? And you're like, yeah, because that's altruistic. That's a good thing to do. Then if we say, okay, will you come donate blood and I'll give you $8 for it? In experiments, people are less likely then to donate blood because they're like, that I was doing something good because it was the right thing to do. And my money and blood is worth more than $8, right? If you're asking me to value that with this extrinsic measurement, $8 isn't going to cut it. You can't have my blood for that. So this idea that it crowds out the intrinsic desire to do something right, it somehow cheapens it and makes you feel like that's not worth it. I would be willing to do that because it's a good thing to do, but I'm not willing to do it for this amount of money that you've given me, right? Anything you want to add to that one?
Well, I think I was trying to think of the book where we were talking about for people working late, salaried employees working late. If you gave them a gift card or you paid them $15 because they stayed all late all evening working on their project, you just calculated that all of that time was worth $15
Right.
versus doing something that it doesn't have a monetary value on it, just recognition for my commitment.
Or even, I want to take care of you. I'm going to bring you lunch or dinner. I'm worried that you would be hungry and I want to provide some sort of care for you. Totally different, $15, right? But one is saying, this is not about money. This is about our relationship. And the other one is like, yeah, you're worth $15. No. Okay. In the same vein, not only can it crowd out good behavior, but it actually can encourage cheating. So if you think about people who make goals for themselves, usually this is because they want to be healthy or they want to achieve something. But when a goal is imposed on us, like if you do this thing, here's the reward you're going to get, that actually narrows our focus so that we're only looking at the end point of that goal. And when the destination is the only thing that matters, then people will pick the shortest way to get there, right? Even if it's not the best or the most moral or ethical. Once you say the only thing that matters is achieving this destination, then people are like, okay, well, then I'm going to figure out how I'm going to get there. And I feel like in business, a lot of times we have examples of this, right? Where people are so hyper-focused on the thing that they stop assessing whether or not what they're doing is the best thing to do.
A lot of business cases, use cases, or case studies on that, for sure.
Yeah.
But going back to Motivation 3.0 and thinking about mastery, you can't shortcut mastery, right? And if you shortcut mastery, then how does that influence your view of the purpose, right? Like what was so I love that. And coming back to the reason why we need to focus on this Motivation 3.0, these three things is that there's a lot of power in mastery and a lot of purpose in that as well. So
yeah, for sure. Well, it I think connects to this next scenario where rewards can actually decrease from success, which is about fostering short-term thinking. So in the same way, if we say, here's the goal, and you're like, okay, I'm laser focused on the goal, doesn't matter how I get there. If you apply rewards, I think a perfect example of this is grades in a class. Then you move from learning right? This like broad, long-term, I need to know how to do this, to I am just trying to achieve the goal that I need to achieve. So the difference between me learning, I don't know, something in my high school where I'm like, I just need the grade. How did I do? Okay, I could never have to think about that again. The difference between my motivation there, which is for the grade, and my motivation in my grad class, where I'm about to have to go do counseling with people. And if I don't learn what to do with a divorced family, I'm going to find myself in a room with a divorced family and be like, oh, I didn't go to class that day. I don't know what to do with you. That's a totally different motivation, right? That's like
Yeah.
long-term plan for success versus I just need the grade and that's what I'm working for. So I think online learning, one of the difficulties of that was that we taught students to work for the grade and they miss the, hey, did you actually learn that? Did you actually have engagement with your faculty so that you know what you're doing? Or at the end of the day, was it just I attended, I did my discussion, and I got my grade and I'm done, right? So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to say about that one.
I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but I think we could connect this back to the US News rankings. And if your short-term thinking is we just need to improve our rankings, what happens when they change the rubric and now you've been focused on the wrong things instead of focusing on these are the students I serve. How can I be most successful with these students?
Yep, that's exactly right. Matt, you and I years ago saw, sorry, I'm going to take a side tangent here because this is so amazing that I want everybody to know about it. A couple of years ago, you and I saw this TED Talk by this man whose name was John Hunter. He's a teacher. The TED Talk is called Teaching with the World Peace Game. Everyone should go listen to it because it's amazing. But I bring it up here because this man created a world peace game for gifted students. He has everybody has a country. And they have, you're going to have to help me, Matt. It's like they have military, they have a president, they have a cabinet, they have like embargoes.
Goddess of weather.
Goddess of weather who decides like if it rains or if it doesn't. And this whole game, they play it all year and they just talk about and role play these different scenarios. I think they have 50 different scenarios that they go through where one thing changes and then everything else has to change. Everybody has to respond to that. And so then they have 15 minutes to negotiate with each other. What are you going to do? We want to do this. What about, right? Just an incredible, you need to watch this because it's incredible. All that to say, those kids are not working for the grade. Yeah. He has made this so engaging and rich that it's like I said last time we talked, pretend like the only motivation is it's really good. It's really interesting. They learn something and they have fun doing it. That's what he's done in this classroom. Those kids couldn't care less what their grade is. They want to be engaged and learn. And that kind of intrinsic motivation is really, really beautiful, I think. Also, there's a movie about it. It's called World Peace and Other Fourth Grade Achievements, which I don't think I said these are fourth graders. So it's just, I can't say enough good things about it. It's really amazing. Do you have something you want to add to that?
Well, I tried to chat it out. I don't know if it went out or not. Maybe you can look at your YouTube.
Yeah, I see it there. All right. The last thing that I want to tell you about the hardship of applying extrinsic rewards is that they can actually become addictive. So, if you tell your kids, I want you to take out the trash and I'm going to pay you $2, you have to pay them $2 for the rest of your life. And in fact, after a while, that $2 is going to seem like the status quo. It's not going to seem like enough money and they're going to come back and renegotiate their salary, right? So in the same way that if we are working for those grades and we get a B instead of an A, we're like, wait a minute, what is this? I always get A's. I don't understand what this is. You're not thinking about the learning journey. You're just like, my reward for this is an A and I didn't get it and I'm very unhappy about it. It feels very bad. So you start chasing more and more and better instead of being present in that journey. And that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that?
No,
Okay.
I think that's right.
So this book does say that there are times where extrinsic rewards are useful. One time they're very useful is if the task is super routine. So it's like, you just have to do this. We don't need to be creative. This is not a lifelong learning thing. Like, we just have junk we have to do in our life sometimes that we don't love doing. And the way that I'm able to do my dishes is that after I do my dishes, I get to eat dessert, right? Like, sometimes you just want to have that extrinsic satisfaction for those routine tasks. And he says that that makes a lot of sense. But he also says in that case to shift from a reward system of if you do the dishes, then you can have dessert, to a now that you've done the dishes, you can have dessert. So one is you're actually working for that reward. And the other one is you've done your task. And then somebody says, thank you so much for doing that. Here's how I want to give you a reward, right? And he talks a lot about the now that being very personal, that can oftentimes just be praise, very specific praise, not you did a great job, but I really liked the way that you stacked the plates in the dishwasher, right? And that it is meaningful information about the task that a person did. So there's a saying about being loved, which is like the difference between being loved in general, I love you, and being loved in specific. I love the way you do this thing. I love this thing about you. Very, very specific. Helps the other person know that you know them really well and you're paying attention to what they're doing. So I really appreciate that. And then the last thing I'll tell you about this book is that he says, if the task is uninteresting, if you have to get everybody to stuff envelopes at your office, here's how you handle it. You say, first of all, this is really important. The reason we're stuffing envelopes is so that we can get everybody to come to our fundraiser, so we can get money, so we can build this building, so we can help the orphans, right? And then you say, this is really boring. I'm so sorry. And then you allow people to complete it in their own way. Because even if it is not a mastery project, when you give them the purpose, which is Motivation 3.0, and you give them autonomy to be able to complete it in the way that they want to, it feels less bad than if you're super prescriptive, don't tell them why, and give them a boring task to have to complete, right?
That's really good.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so do you have something to say?
Keep going.
Okay.
No.
So I think as we're looking at all of this motivation, we want to think about this for our students. I really think that there's something about short-term thinking versus long-term thinking, working for grades versus lifelong learning. All of the different pieces that I think our students have gone through, that we now need to expand their reach and their thinking about how we teach them. I think we can do a really good job of giving them rich, intrinsically motivated projects, cross-departmental, right? Thinking about things that really have purpose, that give them autonomy and help them master some really incredible things. So that's a whole bucket of information that we can talk about how we apply it to students. But Matt, you and I were talking, and actually I'm going to have Sherry Woosley on our next episode, because she works so much around career and around motivation and about what makes people happy in the workplace. And I think what she would say, and what we want to talk about next week, is that in higher education, our students may be lacking motivation because they aren't up to speed. But I don't think our colleagues are lacking motivation. I think they are lacking a sense of feeling valued, right, for the work that they've done and the work that they've done for the last 3 years. And I think that they feel a lack of future, which is, I see how this is going to get better. Like, I can do hard things as long as I see the future coming out of that. And for our listeners, I think that's where we want to camp out in terms of our own personal career satisfaction, because we're just seeing it all over, that people are tired and not feeling valued and not seeing a way out of this place that they've been for so long. And so we want to motivate our students. There are a lot of ways we can do that and apply that to them. But I think this idea of feeling valued and seeing a future that we're going to talk about next week will be really helpful for our colleagues. So
Great. Well, thanks, Rachel. It's really fun. I mean, going through the book Drive by Daniel Pink is awesome, but then applying it to higher ed's really, really great. So
yeah,
thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.
Bye.